you can pretty much get a grass skin for anything that you own at the moment, including the Switch, although it does look like it's sold out. So maybe not. Yeah, all the Switch stuff is sold out. Welcome to the Android Police podcast. It is April 4th as we are recording. I am your host, Will Sattelberg. Daniel Bader is out this week, but joining me is a guest that is at least as intelligent and articulate to walk us through Android news of the week and everything Switch 2. It's Ryan Thomas Shaw, who is the Android Police video producer. Ryan, how's it going?
Hello, it's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me. I've been watching from afar for so long, and now I'm actually on here. It's lovely.
Just yelling at us, being like, you guys should make a better show. That's what I assume people do with a... Yeah, I could do this better.
It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. It's been a weird news week. Lots of news like outside of the world of tech, but then inside the world of tech, things just kind of went quiet to allow for both like Nintendo and also just the noise of the economic fate of the United States and the rest of the world to take the lead. We'll be talking about the S25 Edge's launch and when that is supposed to be happening. I will try not to make an edging joke. Jules, cut that. I shouldn't say that.
Leave that in.
We will talk about the Switch 2, which I'm so curious to get your take, Ryan, because I feel like people have been all over the map on their reactions to the Switch 2, and I kind of get why, but as we will explain, I can't help but be excited for it. And then a grab bag, or not really a grab bag. It's we're going to talk about. It was April Fool's this week, which is my least favorite day on the internet. But we're going to talk about B-Brand's April Fool's gag and kind of turn that into a discussion about cases to end the show. And then, of course, what's making us happy this week. But let's get started on the Edge. The Galaxy S25 Edge is the fourth phone, or will be the fourth phone in the S25 series, not a trio anymore. Samsung has shown it off a couple times at Unpacked in January and at Mobile World Congress in early March. We have been hearing April for months, like kind of before the phone was announced. We've been hearing that this will get a launch event of some kind, if not an outright launch in April. April 15th was the date that like kept appearing over and over again. We saw like basically rumored that it would go on sale directly after an online only event. And then suddenly this week, the word spreads that like that April event is off. The phone is postponed. We don't know exactly when it's coming, but it's delayed essentially. In fact, Win Future's report on this actually said like they might not release the phone at all because it was some kind of, it wasn't just like a planning thing, but they were trying to figure out a component issue with it, which is right. Crazy. Thankfully, the story is kind of already wrapped up, or at the very least, like in its current state. So we learned yesterday it's not canceled. It's still coming. It sounds like early or mid-May, I should say, May 13th. Although it doesn't sound like it's going to go on sale right after the event now. So we still will have to wait a little bit longer for the S25 Edge to make an appearance. But it has kind of been a roller coaster for this phone, in the same way that we kind of had a roller coaster for the Pixel 9a, which I should eat some crow on because I'm pretty sure last week I said I wouldn't be surprised to see it slide into May, and it's I think the day after I said that they announced a date for it. But Ryan, how do you feel about the Edge in general, and then how do you feel about like where is this phone, right? Because it's been over 2.5 months since they unveiled it. It sounds like we're waiting another month and a half for like the real unveiling because we still technically don't have specs for this device. I mean, what do you make of all this?
I don't know. It's a really interesting case, but I think you have to reference the context of the S25 series that we do have. And I think that maybe the initial plan was Samsung knew the S25 series wasn't going to be a massive hitter because we've seen, yes, they are excellent phones, but the general consensus is these aren't groundbreaking new pieces of tech. They're just refinements of the previous years. Maybe Samsung wanted a thing to go, look, guys, there's a new thing here. It's called the Edge. You guys remember the Edge? The Edge was great. Everyone loved the Edge. Here's the 2025 Edge. Initially, I thought the idea to move the Edge like a couple of months later was simply so that the discourse behind the S25 series being underwhelming was kind of like out the way, and they could refreshing their name in the headlines. We have the brand new product. But the more that they've sort of moved it around, or we've thought that the release date's going to be here, there, or is it going to release online only? Like this whole discourse makes me think, maybe this wasn't planned. Maybe they're just incompetent.
Yeah, it feels that way a little bit because it's okay. So a little bit of context, and this is going to sound rough coming off that. We should say that like one of the co-CEOs of Samsung recently passed away. That could play a role in this. I struggle to see how it would play like a full, like, we're going to delay this a month. And especially combined with the reporting that this is some kind of like technical delay.
Yeah.
Makes me think that like the passing of a CEO is maybe a convenient excuse more than a true cause.
Right.
That is my outsider view looking in, right?
Yeah.
So I agree with you that there is a certain level of incompetence or just messiness on Samsung's part, because it's like, if this was the only delay happening, but like we've seen issues with One UI 7 rolling out, right? And that date slipping back and forth a bunch of times. The S25 trio kind of went without any major issues, but I think the longer we wait for this phone, the less impressive it's going to be when it launches.
100%.
It's not really like we've lived with this idea of like, oh, there is like a slightly slimmer S25 out there right now for like, again, 2.5 months now, since Samsung confirmed it was coming. And I think the longer they wait to like give more details about it, the less impressive or impactful it's going to be. If only because like even in the like tech enthusiast sphere, like the attention span can only go on for so long. And like there are other devices launching that could either like sway people to upgrade, or like maybe they wait long enough that they decide that like, a slimmer Galaxy S25 is actually not what I want in my next phone, and they go look elsewhere. And like obviously we've seen tons of Razer leaks on the Samsung side, like their foldables have started leaking as well. We've seen Pixel 10 leaks this week, so like there are new options coming that I think
it's all kicking off.
Exactly. And so I think it is one of those things that like they need to get this information out soon, and I think trying to do even like an online only event might be a mistake. Like I think just give the detail, or if it is online only, like just do it and be like, we have more information coming in May on when you can order it. But I think having the only news about this phone for the last 2 months be like, we still don't know when it's coming, it might be delayed, it could be canceled, like is a problem.
100%. And like you said, it only really gives time to the competition to make new and interesting things. And since it's one of those things where I feel like there needs to be a smaller bracket in time where we know that they're going to make this thing. They've announced it or told us they're making it, and it actually coming out. Because if you leave it too long, it's not a novel thing anymore. Even though the hardware might be brand new, people are only starting to get their hands on it here, there, and everywhere.
Right.
The fact that it's been in our brains, we've been thinking there's an S25 Edge or Air or whatever it is for however long it's been since those early rumors started, and then Samsung gave us put our eyes on it. Basically, that novelty is just dissipated to the point where when we do get our hands on it, and let's face it, it's just going to be a thinner S25. What really is going to be exciting? Now, I don't want to knock it before I try it. It could be really cool, and I'm certainly interested in thinner phones. Like I know they're not always the most practical, but stuff like the On a Magic foldable being so thin, like wow, it's not one of those things until you have it in your hand you realize like this is crazy. So I don't want to completely just dismiss it before it's even here, but I feel like the way Samsung's handled this, whether it's through their own fault or any other means, is just unfortunately not really a viable thing when you have so much competition these days. It's not like when it was just Samsung, Apple, and Google was starting to come in. Like, so Google's making some really exciting phones at the moment. And in Europe as well, because it's not just North America. In Europe, you've got Vivo, Xiaomi, Honor. Everyone's stepping up. Everyone's getting excited about these new pieces of hardware in particular coming out of China. And Samsung, with their own sort of new thing, is it to compensate from the fact that they planned the S25 wasn't going to be a huge upgrade? It's going to be a TikTok. And when we get to the S26, maybe there's going to be some more interesting hardware, and this is sort of a way to sort of bridge the gap. But I haven't heard of anyone in the past 5 years say they need a thinner phone or they want a thinner phone. So and it's not a foldable, so it's not like you can't really compare those. It's just a normal slab style phone that's thinner. I don't get it really.
Yeah, I'm with you. To me it is kind of like the benefit of going thinner is that it will weigh less, because that's really what I want. What I personally want out of the phone is
Yeah.
like I want to feel it less in my pocket, even if it's like a larger device, like this is supposed to have a 6.7-inch display.
Like the
That's
footprint is the
great.
same, but
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. And so, but you can do that without making the chassis thinner. And if you make the chassis thinner, or you have to usually shrink the battery, which is what we've heard about this phone. So like there are lots of downsides to it. So
You also have to reinforce it more, don't you?
yeah,
Internally, otherwise it will snap.
exactly. Right. And
Yeah.
so I'm curious about where we even land on that. But our producer Jules brings up an interesting point, and I think the context that you need for this phone, which is that this is a reaction to like the rumors we've heard for the last like 18 months around like a slim iPhone 17
Yeah.
replacing the Plus lineup. So I think in Samsung's mind, and I don't think they're correct on this, but I think in Samsung's mind, as long as they launch before September, they're fine. It doesn't matter if it takes them until July to unveil this phone or to put this phone up in stores, as long as they beat Apple to the punching and have ad campaigns going throughout the summer for this phone. I don't agree with that, because I don't think the people that are going to think about buying essentially what is like a more premium Galaxy S25 Plus, right? I don't think those people would consider buying an iPhone 17 Air or whatever they end up calling it. So those are the enthusiast markets that are just looking for like whatever is the shiniest, newest piece of tech. They might stick around for the S25 Edge, but they might also just be like, I want to try foldables. I want to try it. Like the new Razor looks nice, like, or whatever, right? Like,
Yeah.
I do think that they're risking that enthusiast market being like, well, I waited long enough. I want to go buy something else, especially with the threat of tariffs being like, maybe I want to go buy my new phone now instead of waiting 6 months to figure out. That is a
Yeah.
problem that Samsung is going to brush up against, which is that like, and granted, like they, even if the event was, in 10 days, they would kind of push up against this. But certainly now that we're talking about like a May or June launch, I think just complicates things.
Yeah, 100%. It's gonna, whether there was a chance for it to start with, it's definitely like every day that goes by, it's making it more tricky. Not just from a competition standpoint, but like you said, just a world view standpoint. It's kind of crazy.
Like, I guess, again, like it is funny to talk about like tech news or future products with the global economic news that it is, but also like South Korea in general is having like a moment right now. Like their news cycle is wild. So like there are obviously lots of like massive geopolitical ramifications that are boiling against this much tinier smartphone news. But it is at least having, if not an impact, then it certainly is like a way that you can look at it and be like, well, like, yeah, I guess there are bigger fish to fry right now.
Yeah. It's not the sort of thing that we really need to, hang our coats on, but at the same time it does feel, I think also there's a level of prestige coming from Samsung. Samsung is regarded as one of the kings, the heavy hitters. So even if, the S25 Edge being delayed by a bit is really actually small news, because it's Samsung, that just plays a huge part in it. We have to talk about it. It's the same way that sports teams, they get news coverage on tiny little details, even details that might not matter, but because they're such big names, that's part of it. That's part of the excitement and the prestige. And when you release something that's really crazy exciting, or like, for instance, I've recently been writing a video on One UI. I think One UI is just, it's gone from a really good software skin to the king. I don't think Google is competing with it at the moment. You can celebrate those wins, even though that there might not be that much to One UI these days that is just overnight sort of catapulted it. But because it's that, Samsung software, we do want to talk about it. At the same time, it's going to be, if Samsung wants to delay something, like you said, with the actual launch of One UI and throwing it out to different devices, throwing it out to older devices, we're going to talk about that as well. So I think it's just part of the course, to be honest. But I am kind of excited. I am intrigued, maybe excited is the wrong word, to see what we do get with the S25 Edge, to be honest. Because I feel like even though, a thinner phone, a lighter phone, still a big phone, I feel like a lot of online discourse, we're talking about it. If we are talking about how we can change the form factor of our smartphones, it's how can we get them smaller, because they're currently like carrying around a tablet. The fact that they've left the footprint the same size, or supposedly left the footprint basically the size of a plus, pretty much, and then just shrunk the thinness and also hopefully reduced the weight as well.
Yeah.
That's something I haven't seen a lot of people really like clamoring for. But if it pays off, it might be one of those things where you hold it in your hand, you're like, wow, this feels like a piece of the future. Because it certainly feels like that way with the thinner foldables, I think.
I haven't held it either, but I've seen it at least in person once, and from afar, surrounded by a pack of people. Sure. But it is the most striking Samsung design I've seen in a minute. Like, it is like, even just the decision to drop back down to 2 camera lenses, like the different shape of them, and like the fact that they're kind of larger on the body, like just immediately, like we've gotten so used to the core Samsung design that like it kind of immediately catches your eye. So I do see where like they might be holding out for potential S25 Ultra buyers to like choose this phone instead, because it is visually different. Even if it does match the rest of the series, Samsung's design language has become so uniform across every smartphone it makes that like this one does stand out as a result.
Yeah, maybe that was by design, but it's certainly, it's nice to have something a bit different, and I think it will definitely help its case, even if the core values of the phone really haven't changed all that much.
I know.
It's just something different, and maybe that's a teaser for what's to come next year, what's to come with the different foldables. Maybe they pivot somewhat. But yeah, like you said, having the dual camera on the back, that is quite striking for a phone that I would have to imagine is going to have a premium price tag on it. But, like what we saw with the foldables, the cameras were cut down, even though the price was really high, because the idea was that foldable buyers in general aren't necessarily the ones wanting the highest end or needing the highest end camera sensors and lenses in their phones. So it's going to be sort of appealing to the right audience. But if they pull it off, power to them, because it's definitely interesting from the outset.
We'll leave it there on the S25 Edge. I would say if you are excited for this phone, just go ahead or erase the circle you drew around April 15th. Go ahead, just flip the page, circle May 13th, and we'll see if we're there in a month and a half. Also, we do want to hear from you. If you have delayed an upgrade this year or are like rushing a smartphone upgrade after this week, write in podcast@androidpolice.com. We would love to hear from you. Ryan, I want to talk about the Switch 2, which is
I can't wait.
The only other thing I've been thinking about this week is the Switch 2. Let's start with the price, right? And obviously we are in different countries, so they're going to be slightly different prices, but $449 USD, it's expensive. And it's $50 more expensive in the US than I thought it would be. It might be $50 more expensive than Nintendo thought it would be, judging by the fact that they did not put the price in the video. They put it in a press release put out immediately after. But did you watch the Direct and or catch up on the news from the Direct? And do you see the Switch 2's price as like, before we even get to like the games and everything, like as a fair number for what was put on display this week?
So I didn't watch it. I'll be honest. I'm not, as much as I have like all the older Nintendo consoles, I've not been a huge Switch fan. My partner has the Switch and the Switch OLED. She loves the Switch. I'm sure eventually she'll probably buy a Switch too. I think the price is interesting. Let's not get into the rest of the details yet. We'll save that. But the price for what we've seen so far, it's expensive, but I don't think it's outrageous. And I think that you kind of have to look at it in the context of when Sony announced the PS5 Pro and everyone went absolutely berserk. I'm not sure if it's the same thing as we'll get into with like the games and exclusivity, the price of the games and stuff, but with the PlayStation 5 Pro and the price and the outrage around that, I was really surprised by just how loud the noise was, because it was one of those products, and it is one of those products where you don't need to buy that model. Whereas with the Switch 2, it looks like there's going to be Switch 2 exclusive stuff, which means you're going to be forced to upgrade, not in the same way that Sony was with the PS5 Pro. Yeah. But I also think that, and it is a substantial price hike, but I don't think it's out of reach for, it's not like are you going to buy a gaming PC? People, have you tried to buy a gaming PC recently? They're like $2,000 minimum. When you add in the context of what Sony did with the PlayStation, the prices of Xboxes, the prices of PCs, the price of the Switch OLED, at least at the moment as well, it's expensive. It's a little pricey. The console itself, though, I don't think it's outrageous. I think it's just a little bit expensive.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting and good to know that you're coming at this from someone who isn't a Nintendo fan. If you play games, what do you usually play? Or at least what hardware do you usually play on?
So
PC, PS5?
yeah, so I have a Switch, like the
Yeah.
base model Switch, and I played the Pokemon the Diamond remake because they
Okay.
did a Diamond and Pearl remake.
Yep.
I played the original Diamond on my DS like
Yeah.
however many years ago. Loved it. Played the remake on the Switch. Fantastic. But I've tried all of my partner's games on there, and I'm just not interested in it. That game
Yeah.
in particular, though, it was like a nice nostalgic moment. These days, I play PC mostly.
Yeah.
I'm big into racing simulators, so I have like a sim in the corner of my room with the 3 screens and everything, and I race on PC. And then I also like FPS games on PC, so I'm big into Apex Legends, Counter-Strike, that kind of thing. I grew up playing a lot of Nintendo though, so I
Yeah.
have somewhere in my possession a NES, SNES, N64, GameCube, and I really enjoyed those games as a kid. I feel like as I've got older, everything competitive has kind of taken over, which is, the general landscape of games. Every game seems to have a ranked mode these days. I don't know, I've fallen into that camp. So maybe I'm not the target audience for the Switch 2 in particular. I do love my Mario Karts though, and obviously that
Well,
was
okay,
one of
then
the
we have a lot
big
to talk
announcement.
about. Right.
Yeah,
That's really good context because I feel like I play kind of everything. I have my laptop is a gaming laptop, like the thing I'm recording on right now. But I also have a Steam Deck and a PS5 and a Switch OLED that I bought. Kind of like you, I guess. Kind of grew up on a lot of Nintendo stuff, and actually more their handhelds than their consoles. To be honest, I kind of pick up where you left off, which is that like my first Nintendo console is was the Wii. We were a PlayStation family when it came to like the consoles. Yeah, it's kind of just become part of me, especially because like having owned like a GBA and like that having been like kind of the core thing I had growing up, right? Like a lot of the Nintendo games on there were just kind of remakes of or ports of like SNES games. So I have a lot of nostalgia for like older titles through that. And then similarly on like the DS and the 3DS with a lot of N64 ports. So like it kind of comes through there, which means that I'm just like a sucker for anything Nintendo is going to announce. And like, this is my
sure.
jam. And I've known for, it has been kind of one of those things where it's just like, just tell me the date. I have to go pre-order it. You are going to get money from me. It doesn't really matter what the price is, which is kind of where I land, which is that like 450 is $50 more than I expected. But like, again, it does feel like that was not the price that was set in stone. And it might not be the price in 3 months. We'll see.
Yeah, because the limited availability of the Switch when that released, I mean, and
Yeah.
the scalping prices, like that price is all well and good. We can talk about that price all day, but in reality, I'm not sure it's going to be the one that we see when we go to order, or if it is, it's going to say out of stock next to it for 6 months, a year, however long. So yeah,
the Switch kind of came out right as I like graduated college and was like finding my first like full-time job, and so I had some disposable income that summer, and like the only reason I mean, the reason I bought the Switch on the day I bought the Switch in whatever summer 2017 was just because I saw it in stock one day when I was like at like a Walmart and they had like 3 left, and I was like, oh, I'm just buying one then, I guess. And like I'm hoping that doesn't happen this time because I would like to just pre-order it, and but we'll see. So yeah, so the other number we're talking about or talking around, I guess, hi Linus, is this is why you got to watch the video if you're listening out there. You got to watch the video so you can see my cat just crawl all over me because he was sad that I wouldn't let him in. Mario Kart World, which is the big launch title for this console. It was the trailer that they opened at the show with. They showed like 5 minutes of it. It's $80, which I think has kind of overshadowed the conversation a lot of people have had
100%.
about this game. I get it. I'm going to, I guess, be devil's advocate right off the bat, just because I think it's very easy to be like $80 is ridiculous for a game. And I mostly agree, especially as someone who mostly buys their games like months after launch, like when they're on sale. I definitely paid more than $80 for Mario Kart 8 because because I am a sad. Ryan, you were talking to one of the few sad Wii U owners.
Oh no,
So
I have friends who are big Wii U fans. The Wii U is underrated, I must say.
It is underrated.
I don't own one, but I've played extensively, and yeah, I think they are underrated.
And I think you can prove that because it's like so many of those games, I mean, right down to like, we just saw Xenoblade Chronicles X come to
Mm.
the Switch. Like, the Switch got almost every major Wii U port that it could have, not counting like Wind Waker HD, which factors into the Switch 2 announcement somehow. But yeah, so it's I bought Mario Kart 8, and then I definitely bought Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on the Switch. I bought the DLC on the Wii U, and then I bought the DLC on the Switch. So like, I've definitely paid, 100 and
Yeah.
whatever, $160 probably. Like, so, I'm not defending the price in any
You
way
sound like you
whatsoever.
have an abnormal amount of disposable income compared to these people online who are like,
It's
I'm not
it
going to
will
be able to afford $80 for a game. And you're like, here, I want to buy it 3 times.
You got to remember that that $160 is spread over
Of
like a
course. Of
full
course.
decade,
Yeah.
almost, right? Because it's like 2014 when I bought Mario
Oh, you
Kart 8
just
for the
made me
Wii
feel
U.
really old with that. Thanks for that.
I know. I'm sorry.
I'm meant to be the young one. I'm not meant to be the old one.
Man, as someone who turns 30 this year, it is happening more and more to me. So yeah, it's but the DLC was whenever a year later.
Yeah.
The deluxe version I bought, I think I held out until 2018. I don't think I bought it for my Switch immediately, and I didn't pay full price. I think I got it for $40, and then bought the DLC they put out like over the last couple of years. It looks great though. That's the thing. Like, that's why I can't get upset over it, is that it looks like a real reinvention of the series in a way that I didn't expect them to do. Taking like the Forza Horizon model
Mhm.
and adapting it to Mario Kart like seems really smart. And I'm like pretty excited to like kind of just waste time and drive around this world, like, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, you said you play Mario Kart, Ryan. What did you think of the trailer?
Yeah, it's interesting. I do like the idea of it. I think you put it really well there, sort of taking the Forza Horizon formula and converting it to Mario Kart, because Mario Kart is, the kart racer sort of genre
Yeah.
hasn't really changed much over the past 20, 30 years. I think the most innovative kart racer I remember playing was like Crash Tag Team Racing, where
Yeah.
you could merge with another kart and one of you would be on a weapon, the other one would be the driver, and then you split off, and this would all happen mid race. So taking something like taking a name as big as Mario Kart, because Mario Kart is the definitive kart racer,
Yeah.
even if you're a big Crash fan, and I do think that the open world is something that I don't know if you're aware of this, but open world has taken on such an insane percentage of racing even. So we've had Assetto Corsa Evo that is currently in early access, I believe, or it's
Yeah.
in early testing. And
Yeah.
when they announced that would have support for open world as well, everyone went crazy. Like, this is going to be incredible. That's not
Yeah.
out yet. I believe that is coming sort of the latter end of this year. But the way of taking your very much simulator game and turning it
Yeah.
into an open world as well, or at least having that as part of it, a huge draw to people. Taking a kart racer and a name that everyone knows and turning that into an open world game, it just feels like the thing to do. If you're in any way creating a racing game, it makes sense to go that route. And like you said, it just looks good. I'm still not sure on the price, I must say, but
Yeah, I get it.
given it is so different, it's not like they're just reskinning Mario Kart 8 and then charging $80 for it. Because
No.
Mario Kart 8, I didn't feel was like leagues different than Mario Kart 7, at least not in the way that this is going to be different to Mario Kart 8.
Yeah.
And so I think the console not being extortionate money, the price of the game isn't that bad. I don't know about you also, because it sounds like you play a lot of games.
Mm.
For the Switch, I never really, and the same for my partner, never really bought a huge volume of games for the Switch like we would on PC. There's like a game key going cheap, or Steam's
Yeah.
having a sale. We might buy 3 or 4 games. Whereas for the Switch, it feels like we have almost a controlled library of games, no more than sort of like 15 or so. And so the price you're going to spend on those games doesn't have to be as low, because overall you're not spending enough. Not like you will, because you're going to buy like 4 copies of it. So
I'm going to
that's
buy
fine.
4 copies of yeah. Well, and Ryan, your copy of Mario Kart World is in the mail. I bought one for you.
Oh, thank you so
It's on
much.
its way.
Thank you.
Yeah, I my Switch library is gross. Truly, it's just I've accumulated over 8 years almost. A dumb amount of games. It is not, to your point, it is not like my Steam library, which is much
Mm.
larger. primarily because yeah, gross in the numerical sense, says Jules. That too. My Steam library is definitely larger, just because, again, like you said, like you see those, you get a Wario 64 notification on Twitter, and you're like, I gotta buy whatever that game is. But I do think I want to wait a little bit, and there's a Mario Kart World Direct coming in a couple weeks,
Mm,
so like I would like to know everything that is in that game, and I don't expect it to have nearly as many tracks as 8 Deluxe, because that 8 Deluxe is kind of the Smash Brothers Ultimate of Mario Kart
mm,
games. But like I am excited for something new that, as you said, like it doesn't look anything other than the fact that it is a kart racer. It
yeah.
doesn't look anything like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and I think that does make it easier to swallow the price. As does the fact that not every this is the only $80 Switch game announced so far. Like Donkey Kong Bonanza is the other big like launch window title, and that is $70, which is more in line with the rest of the industry at the moment. So
Yeah, that's a good point. Games are just more expensive now, especially on
yeah,
console. There are certainly PC titles out there that are very expensive, but it doesn't. Is it again sort of in the Samsung vein because Nintendo is probably the biggest name in gaming? Is it sort of open to more scrutiny? Are we just going to go harder on it when things are expensive? But you could also look at it like, yeah, they are the kings of gaming, and you're going to have to pay a premium for that. But it's kind of been like that throughout the whole Switch's life. Like, I don't know about the state of the used market in the US and stuff, but in the UK, you're basically paying brand new pricing for secondhand games for the Switch.
pretty
It's
much.
insane.
Yeah. No, it's similar here, where it's there are no used game
Mm,
price deals to be
hmm.
found, basically,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
exactly that. Yeah.
Okay, so you're a PC centric gamer, so I want to talk a little bit about the specs of the Switch 2 and see if
Hmm.
this wins you over a little bit, maybe, because it is more in line with something like the Steam Deck than I thought maybe
Mm,
Nintendo would be
yeah.
going in that direction, right? Like it was very weird to hear Nintendo be like, the display is 120 hertz. Like like it is
Yeah,
weird
you
to hear
never hear
Nintendo.
them talk about specs, do you?
No,
No.
not since like they made the most powerful. Actually, was the Xbox more whatever? The GameCube was obviously more powerful than the PS2, and it didn't matter. And I feel like since that generation 20 years ago, they like fully abandoned the specs race,
Yeah.
and this is the first time where it feels a little bit like they're back in it. Like obviously, I don't think they're chasing the PlayStation 5 by any means, but like
No.
they're chasing Valve and Asus to a
I
certain
just think
extent.
I don't know about you. Growing up, it wasn't
Yeah.
like, cool to be a PC gamer when I was growing up. You
No,
kind of
a
just,
100%.
and
Yeah.
but it now with, and whether it's because of, people like Linus Tech Tips or just because it's all more accessible now,
Yeah.
and almost everyone seems to be a PC gamer. And as a result of that, not everyone's going to be really nerdy into the specs, but to a certain degree, I feel like the general gamer now is probably a bit more clued up on specs than they were 20 years ago. And so,
Yeah. I
when
agree.
they mention 120 hertz and resolutions and things, people are actually listening and going, yeah, I recognize that. That sounds like a good time. And I can't remember where I read it, where someone was saying that, we're not used to consoles having high refresh rates, but I mean, the Series X and the PS5 have done high refresh rate
Yep.
gaming. So it's not like Nintendo is, fresh with this new idea. But I
No.
think the fact that it's Nintendo, the fact they're talking about specs, and the fact that it seems like hardware is playing quite a big role in this whole launch is actually exciting because,
Yeah.
wow, we haven't seen this from Nintendo in a long time. And also, it gives you that perspective compared to the other consoles. Is it going to feel as smooth as a PS5? Could do if it's running games at 120 FPS. It may be the graphic settings in typical Nintendo fashion. It's not like we're going to have to, really push the boat out with that. But is it
No.
going to feel
Right.
as responsive? Where the Switch, you could say, even because the Switch came out long before the Steam Deck, the Switch never really felt cutting edge. This could
No.
feel cutting edge. So,
I look, they showed that Metroid Prime 4 footage.
mm,
That game supports 4K 60 or 1080p 120, which is crazy for a Nintendo game, but like it's interesting that it's like I look at that and it's one of the few like console games where I'm like I have faith in Nintendo. They have designed this game to hit those marks in a way that like because of the more realistic art direction that games usually take on like the PS5 or the Xbox, like sometimes those games even if they're trying to support 120, like I've been sitting on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth for a year now. That game has like technical issues if you're not playing it on a PS5 Pro despite the fact that like you can adjust the performance or quality settings in your settings, like it doesn't matter. Versus like Nintendo, where I have faith that that Metroid game will hit. You know, if you put it on 1080p at 120, like it will do a pretty solid 120 on a supported display, including the one that is on the Switch too. Nintendo devoted a whole segment to being like, we're going to make your Switch games like look better or run better, right? Like, which I just think is interesting. And like watching those demos, like they did look great. It was a bunch of examples, you know, they're putting out these patches for the 2 Switch Zelda games, and like these games look fantastic on the Switch. Dude. They look like how it looked if you emulated it on a PC and installed 4K mods for it, but they look great. You know, real quick, I want to run down some specs if people missed the Switch 2 this week. It's got a 7.9-inch LCD screen, not OLED. That'll come, I'm sure, in a couple years to convince suckers like me to buy it, and I will.
And it's going to look incredible.
It's going to look great. I really hope it's a good LCD panel, because like the OLED panel on the Switch OLED is, it does. I feel spoiled by it. You know, it's a fantastic kit, and to be honest with you, like I have a PlayStation Portal. I'm like one of the, I think I've talked about it on the show, but I'm one of those suckers that bought one. I actually bought it a year after launch, and I quite like it. That has an LCD screen that looks fantastic. If it's the same display or like a very similar display, I'd be happy. 256 gigabytes of storage. It can output 4K at 60 or 1080p at 120. It also supports 1440p if you plug it into
a 1440p master race.
Yeah, there we go. Which I think, you know, combined with the mouse stuff that the Joy-Con can do now, I think is really interesting. I think they are really seeing this as a thing that people will plug into a computer monitor.
I'm so glad that mainstream consoles and things are now supporting it, because it's just such a good in-between. 4K is fantastic, but not everything is going to feel as responsive at 4K. Not every game needs to run at 4K to look good. No. And yeah, I'm so glad that Nintendo has included support for this, because it's just such an upgrade over 1080p. You at the same screen size, you wouldn't, because it's not 4K. It's not the shiny gold sticker on the box. It's, people kind of maybe dismiss it or overlook it, but 1440p is so crisp compared to 1080. It's insane.
Yeah, no, 100%. And especially when you combine it, like if you can get games running on this thing at 1440p at 120, like it'll look, that will, I genuinely think that will look better than 4K 60, like 100%. Night and day. It's got built-in microphones for this chat thing that everyone's been dunking on all week. I don't disagree. It is clearly built to be a rival for Discord that is built into the console. I think most people, if Monster Hunter Rise 2 or whatever comes out on the Switch 2, I assume that people who already play Monster Hunter together or whatever online game together will just use Discord and not use this. But it's nice that it's there. Like I think the Switch, you know, especially because the Switch 1 had wanted people to use their phones, which like whatever. So yeah, I think it's one of those things that they listened to their audience, even if it's a little goofy, that screen sharing runs at like 10 FPS or something very silly. 2 USB-C ports, which I think is great. They've got one on the top and the bottom. It solves an issue that the original Switch had where it couldn't stand on a table and charge. Supports most Switch games with backwards compatibility. There is a list going around of more games than I expected not having full support at the moment, but it is primarily most games are going to work fine. 2 to 6.5 hours of battery life, which is less than the Switch OLED in the original like iteration. After it was not advertised as such, but they like redid the Switch a couple years in. That one also had like much better battery life. This kind of brings it back down to like original Switch levels, but you're playing games like Elden Ring and Cyberpunk, which probably is where that 2 hour number is coming from. And that's similar to what we've seen on the Steam Deck, right? Like 2 to 6 hours is about what I get on my Steam Deck, depending on what I'm playing. So I'm not surprised. Custom processor made by NVIDIA. We don't really have the specifics on that. And then, like I said, the Joy-Con are magnetic now. They have this weird mouse thing. I'm glad they're trying something with it, but it is very weird. I'm curious to see how that translates to like actual games. But they showed, you know, stuff like Metroid has like mouse support now, which is crazy. You know, if they
it's something different, isn't it? It's at least they're trying to offer something new. Like we said, it is a little expensive, but at least it's not just a normal Switch with a slightly better screen. It genuinely just looks like a different generation of console, and that's exactly what you want, really. These
Yeah.
days, we've seen iteration across technology, smartphones, consoles, whatever, and the Switch 2 actually looks like a second generation product, maybe even third gen if you want to include the OLED as sort of a second gen or revised version of the Switch. So yeah, I think the mouse thing is just adding another string to its bow. Whether it's any good, like you said, we'll see, but at least it's something new. So
There were a couple game announcements. We mentioned Donkey Kong Bonanza, which looks like a very fun Donkey Kong game, very destructive, very like Hulk on the GameCube. If anyone remembers that game, they announced actually, Ryan, this might appeal to you. They announced GameCube Switch Online support. They're bringing GameCube games to the Switch too. That was, it sounds like the last. Well, not the last because obviously you have a Switch, but that was your console growing up or one of the consoles you had growing up. I'm kind of surprised they did this actually, to be honest, as part of the Switch membership. Like it feels like a much larger perk than even like N64 games. Like you can sit down and play Wind Waker today and have a pretty good, relatively modern experience. And that's not true with every N64 game. So I think that's pretty cool. And they're making new GameCube controllers with like that are wireless and USB-C, which I think
oh,
is.
I did not see that. That is
Oh yeah.
sick. I love
Oh
that.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I've
No,
been
they
using
look great.
I've been using a lot of third party controllers. I've settled more recently on the 8-bit do like
Yeah.
the SNES one with the
Yeah.
USB-C on it. I really like that controller.
That one's good.
Yeah, my partner has the Switch Pro controller, and I must say that might be one of the nicest feeling controllers I've ever used. The Switch Pro
Yeah.
controller, it just
It's really nice.
ergonomically, it's so nice.
It
But
just
yeah,
fits in your hand right. Like you
oh
want to
yeah,
hold that thing. It lasts forever. Like
yeah,
Sony, I have like a dock for my PS5 controllers because
mhm,
I will forget to charge them otherwise. And you basically have to charge them like after every play session.
yeah,
I charge my Switch Pro controller like once a month. Like
yeah,
it doesn't need like any, and I hope it's the same with the new Pro controller they announced, which looks very similar but has like back paddles, which is a
yeah.
great addition for a Pro controller.
Yeah, that's interesting because I was first introduced to paddles on a controller
Yeah.
with my Xbox 360 Scuff, which I loved
Oh
for
yeah.
Call of Duty, and I have a Scuff for the PS5 as well. And I really I like it as a concept, and obviously the Steam Deck also has the back paddles, or the back buttons. But I've always used them in competitive games for Call of Duty mostly, for sort of jumping and throwing nades and stuff, where I don't have to take my thumb off of the right joystick to use the action buttons on the right hand side. And it will be interesting to see how much use they get on Nintendo first party games, especially for those trickier platformers as well, where you don't want to take your thumb off the joystick or anything like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I'm excited for that. And did you say the GameCube controller will have those as well, or just the Pro controller?
Just the Pro controller.
Just the Pro
But the
controller.
GameCube,
Okay.
so the GameCube controller looks virtually identical to the like purple GameCube
Yep.
controller in your
Yep.
head, except it's wireless with a USB-C port and it has the like a Switch specific, like the chat button is on there. I think
Oh,
it even
okay.
has like a built-in microphone, which, again, it's like they're really going all in on the chat thing, but it is nice to see them support it with a controller that like I think they know people are going to be using that to continue playing like Smash Brothers, and so
Yeah.
like I think it makes sense for them to build the microphone into that. So yeah, I don't
100%.
know if we have pricing on that, but I'm buying one, like absolutely buying. I might buy
Hmm.
two because I have wired old GameCube controllers, but I could always use new ones. There's just not a controller quite like it for Smash. The last game I want to talk about really quickly was the game that like truly made my jaw drop a little bit, and that's the Duskbloods, which is a game that looks like Bloodborne, is how I would describe
Right.
it. I was texting Taylor Kearns actually while this was happening, AP's Taylor Kearns, and I said, "Oh, LOL, it's Bloodborne," which is not a joke. I know lots of people made this joke when this trailer started. I'm not alone in this, but I said, oh, like LOL, they're bringing Bloodborne to the Switch too. And then kinda a little bit they are kind of bringing Bloodborne to the Switch too.
Yep.
It is a multiplayer game. It sounds like it is PvPvE, so it is a slightly new take on them. It doesn't sound, they have Elden Ring Night Rain coming out, which is also a multiplayer game, but this sounds like a different take on it. And it's not Bloodborne 2, but it is probably the closest we will ever get to Bloodborne 2. And it is such a dunk on Sony for Nintendo to have this as a Switch 2 exclusive, which I didn't expect. I did not have on my bingo card that I didn't have, but I should have. That essentially the Dark Souls to Bloodborne's Demon Souls would come out as a Switch 2 exclusive. I just think that's crazy. I don't know if you're a Souls guy, Ryan, at all.
I'm not, but I from what you've said there, it is interesting to see that, like, yeah, sure, we've just got it on the Switch too. No worries. Like, oh, okay.
Sony has had a decade. Like Bloodborne, I think turned a decade. Last month. I believe that was a March 2015 game. And
again, making me feel very old.
I'm sorry. Hey man, me too. Me too. I was like in the back half of college. But anyway, it's it's one of those things where it's like you've had, especially since the PS5 came out, which is almost 5 years now, people begging for either a port or a remaster or a remake of Bloodborne at a higher frame rate and with, enhanced graphics or whatever, but really just the frame rate. And Sony's done nothing with that license other than put the Hunter in Astrobot, which is fun, but like, you have to do, like, eventually, like, From Software is no stranger to making deals with other companies. They work with lots of publishers.
Yeah.
And I'm not surprised this eventually happened. I'm mostly just surprised that it happened with Nintendo. So, between this,
maybe that's just the bold move that Nintendo are going. They're expanding, like you said, maybe playing Cyberpunk and stuff. That's not something you would typically talk about in the same sentence as a Switch. This feels like, sure, this, what sells Nintendo consoles is a Nintendo game, sure.
Right.
Or what if we could also play other games on a Nintendo console? It just also helps justify the price, in my opinion, because you're appealing to more people and you're giving them more options.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, it is kind of like, hey, look, like, did you decide not to buy a PlayStation 5? Like, do you still, are you sitting on a Switch and a PS4 or a PS4 Pro and you don't know what to buy next? Like, come buy the Switch 2 and you can play the last half decade of games you've missed out by not having a PS5.
Or like, if you've been thinking about buying it in one of those Steam Deck OLEDs, maybe we can sway you with not only the games you like to play that you would have played on the Steam Deck, but some exclusives as well. That's going to be a big pull.
Exactly. So I'm excited. I was always going to be excited. This is built for me. I'm a sucker for this. And Mario Kart World looks like extremely my jam. But yeah, we'll have to leave it there. And then once Daniel is back in a couple of weeks, we'll get his take on the Switch 2 as well. But Ryan, any final thoughts on the Switch 2?
Yeah, I would say don't judge it too harshly until we've had like with every tech product, until we have the actual the thing in our hands.
Yeah,
but actually, I also applaud those who are not afraid to criticize Nintendo, because they are the kings, but even the kings can make mistakes sometimes.
Not a perfect look. I have ranted about this recently, but like I tried going back to Pokemon Scarlet Violet recently, and those games are unplayable technically. I'm like on a technical level. So allegedly they are getting performance bump, not like paid performance bumps, but like just performance bumps on the Switch 2. I don't think you can fix those games anyway, but not a perfect company. Okay, let's talk about our final thing. Ryan, how do you feel about April Fool's gags on the internet?
I avoid social media at all costs generally, but I make specifically sure to avoid on April Fools.
One of my least favorite things is well, it's April Fool's Day in general, but specifically because I'm like you, I will basically turn my brain off on April Fool's Day, except for when I open YouTube and I just forget. Like the second that app is open, I forget what day it is. I'm like, oh, nice. This creator I like made a new video. And then you click on it and you realize like it's an April Fool's Day joke, which can be funny, I guess, if it's a creator that makes things like regularly. But and this doesn't happen quite as much. But like, do you ever find like a creator you like, Ryan, that makes videos like once or twice a year? And then they put out an April Fool's Day joke. And you're like, you don't make videos regularly enough to earn my respect on this. Like I want more videos from you. I don't want joke videos from you.
We've been waiting this long for a new video and that's what you put out? Thanks.
Exactly. And it's like, look, I'm sure this didn't take that much time to put together, but come on, I want something, real.
100%.
Dbrand, I guess, kind of beat the internet this week by both making an April Fool's Day joke that you can actually buy and one that is like pretty harmless in the grand scheme of things. They made a skin that allows you to touch grass while you doom scroll economic news on your smartphone. It is literally grass. It is a grass skin. I don't know what to say about this. Like, Ryan, what do you make of this?
I'm going to be honest. I kind of like it. Like,
Yeah,
I think Dbrand is kind of edgy in general. I'm not sure
yeah,
I agree with everything Dbrand does, but I do like this idea, and I think that's maybe because certain textures are just really satisfying. And I like it. I like that it's different, and I like that it's a texture. It's a different texture. It's not. We've had wood effect phone cases. We've had the sandstone stuff that OnePlus has been doing for years. This is different. I like it. And also, it makes sense,
yeah.
the whole touch grass gag is all well and good, but the actual product itself might be better than the gag itself. I don't know. I don't know what you think about
Look, if you're gonna make an April Fool's Day joke like this, you have to go all in. I
that. Yeah.
appreciate that they went all in. Like, I am looking at the like buy a skin screen right now,
Hmm.
and like you can pretty much get a grass skin for anything that you own at the moment, including the Switch OLED, and the Switch Pro controller. So if you want
Nice.
to play through Breath of the Wild while holding a controller that feels like it's made of grass, you can do that, which I
And you
think is
should do that.
fantastic. Although it does look like it's sold out. So maybe not.
Oh,
Yeah, all the Switch stuff is sold out. But if you have an iPad, seeing the iPads in stock, Pixels in stock. So yeah, they're there. But no, it's a relatively funny. It's also, I do have to shout out that the menu, the entire like display they built on their website for this is fantastic. Like, it's really fun to just like scroll through. It's like Windows 95 themed for whatever reason. Clippy shows up at some point. It's quite fun. But I know Jules wanted us to use this as a way to jump off. And I feel like you already kind of said it, but like, what is the best case texture when you are shopping
ooh.
for a phone case, Ryan? Like, what texture are you looking for?
So
Because there's lots of textures. You can get smooth, you can get slippery, you can
yeah,
get grippy. What do
I
you
don't
what
like
do you look
those ones. I've had them a couple of times when I've had iPhones in the past, and I bought a cheap case off Amazon. Those ones that like they look and they feel fine the second you get them out of the box,
Yep.
but then after you've been using them, that sort of like the grease on your hands naturally, the oils on your hands,
Yep.
sort of wear the rubber a bit, and then they are literally impossible to get in and out of your pocket. Do you know the cases I'm talking about?
I
I
do.
cannot stand them. It's because they're cheap rubber, I'm sure.
There are lots of bad. Yeah, there sometimes there's nothing worse than buying a phone case that you like out of the box, and then like
Hmm.
3 days in you're like, actually I hate this, and
Yeah, yeah,
like I don't want to use this anymore. I can't do like any of the like transparent clear cases, like
yeah,
rubber cheap cases like that do the same thing you're talking about, where they just like the oil builds up on them,
yeah.
they just turn gross. Like,
Like typically the ones that come with cheaper Chinese phones that are in the
yes,
box, that kind of
exactly.
texture. Yeah.
Yeah, it's terrible. And even like the matte, if you go out of your way, you can buy like matte clear
Hmm.
cases. Even those are not fantastic. I find that those also build up oil. I always look for anything that is kind of just rubbery and plasticky. I have like this is an iPhone case, but I have it next to me because this company mostly makes iPhone cases, but Smartish makes like just
Okay.
matte plastic with like a grippy frame around it that are very nice to hold. Like, they don't really show fingerprints. They don't really build up grime. They make your phone feel cleaner than it probably is, if that makes any sense. So I like those. They're a little on the bulky side, but they're not like OtterBox levels or anything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's usually what I go for. But although, to be honest with you, like I mostly go caseless these days. Like I especially when I'm reviewing something.
Yeah. I have
Yeah.
to agree. I always used to buy a case when a review unit came in. I just ordered the cheapest case I could.
Same. Yeah.
But these days it's just like the phones are pretty tough, and I'm generally not that butterfingers with my phone, so it's not so bad. I have to say though, and I have to make a point of saying this. I am not a OnePlus shill, right? I just say nice things about their products because I
Sure.
like their
Sure. Sure.
products.
Sure.
But OnePlus's first party cases have been,
Yeah.
for me, the best since like the OnePlus 3. When I bought my OnePlus 3 back in the day, I bought it with like the carbon fiber case, and I was like, this is next level. I
Yeah.
also think that the Google Pixel first party cases are really nice. But yeah, the OnePlus ones, especially like the sort of sandstony, because it's not the same as the sandstone texture that was on the OnePlus One, but it's sort of a sandstony rubber sort of hybrid that you get with the OnePlus 13. Really like those cases. I think
Yeah.
when I'm buying a case, I want something with a bit of texture to it. I don't want something that's like completely slick
Right.
because it's easier to get in and out of my pocket. And I
Exactly.
always feel like the phone is safer in my hand if there's a bit of texture
Yes.
to it.
Yeah.
Like you were saying earlier with the cases with the usually the frame, the
Yeah.
additional
Here, let me
frame
see
on
if
it.
I can. So
Yeah.
so you can see that like this is smooth, but that is textured and
Yes.
crispy. Yeah. Same
Yeah.
same kind of thing. Yeah.
That's the kind of thing I go for.
Yeah. Right there with you. I have a Pixel case in front of me that I would hold up if I could, but I can't under embargo. Make of that what you will. But yeah, I agree with you that I quite like the last couple generations of Pixel cases, with the exception that they, if you wear any kind of like jeans or anything, they will get covered in lint from your
Hmm.
pocket 100% of the time. But with, like, I don't know, there are obviously like other, but like for whatever reason, like jean lint just like attracts those things like a
I
magnet.
also think, and it's slightly underrated, and it's very
Yeah.
niche talking about cases, but I
Yeah.
think that Pixel cases do buttons the best, in my opinion.
I agree with you. Yeah, especially the mainline, like the Pixel 8 or Pixel
Yeah,
9
yeah,
cases, like where they have dedicated buttons.
yeah.
Because God, I've tried so many phone cases where like the buttons just ruin it. Like you can
Yeah.
just like they make it so mushy or like non-tactile that like it becomes difficult to use the
Hmm.
phone almost.
And they might be fine for the first couple of weeks, but then they
Yeah,
just sort of
yeah,
mush into nothingness.
the worst. But yeah, no, I'm glad we're both kind of on the caseless train lately. It's just like I feel like it is the correct way to like test a phone usually when I'm reviewing it, but it is also just like so much nicer feeling in my pocket. I guess kind of going back to like talking about the bulkiness of phones, like
Mm,
that is like a thing that you have to take into account when you are buying a Pixel. Like I don't think I really realized until I think Taylor recently wrote an editorial about how bulky the Pixel 9 and specifically with the camera bump the Pixel
hmm.
9 is. But that Pixel the Pixel 9's camera island adds like 3 additional millimeters. At its thickest point, that phone is like 12 millimeters thick. And because of that, any case you put on it essentially adds that 3 millimeters to help protect the camera
Yeah,
bump, which makes it like kind of an annoying phone to use with a case on in a way that like you can't really buy slim cases for it without having to forego protection of the camera lenses. And at that point, it's like, well, then I'll just use the phone without a case. Like,
yeah. I think phones are big enough that, like, once you add a
exactly,
case, it's like, holy moly, like, this is hardly going to fit in my pocket.
exactly. All right. Ryan, we have reached the end of the show. Every week, we like to ask each other as hosts what is making us happy this week. This does not have to be a tech thing. It can be a tech thing, but it can be anything you're reading, watching, doing.
Of course.
Yeah. What's making you happy this week?
This week, oh, it's good timing. The English weather, as you can tell, that is my
Oh,
window, it's completely
yeah.
blown out. It's just been very lovely the past
Good.
couple of days. It's 15 degrees Celsius today, which to some people in the world that might sound cold. It is boiling. I am running around in shorts and a t-shirt, and I'm happy. The weather has made a great deal of difference
Good.
because just last week it was stormy and rainy and horrible. So that is what is making me happy this week.
Americans will help you out. It's 59 degrees Fahrenheit. Which
I
is
don't even know that what that is in Celsius.
No, I'm right there with you. Like any God, we had a day recently where it was similar like
Mm,
15, 16 degrees Celsius like 2 weeks ago, and like yeah, I was outside. I went on a
hmm.
walk, like shorts and a t-shirt, and I felt
Yeah,
so warm. Like it felt like an 80-degree summer, 25
yeah, yeah. I know
degree
what you
summer
mean.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah, God, genuinely nothing better than like after a long winter, like a nice, doesn't
Well,
even have
it's
to be super warm, just
no,
a
no,
nice
just
day.
a clear sky. You get
Yeah.
your vitamin D, and it's like it's crazy because it feels like just last week there was, we were scraping ice off of the cars, and now it's like, and when you're walking around, people are happy, people are smiling, people are out on bike rides.
Yep.
It's just nice.
Yep. I know here in Buffalo, like we had a record breaking day last month. And we had a day where it hit, in Celsius, I want to say like 22 or 23 in March,
Mm,
which is
that
crazy
is
for
crazy.
here.
Yeah.
There's a bike path near my house, and I went on a run near it. or on it, and like I was only on the path itself for maybe like a mile before I went and just ran off some side streets next to it. I must have passed like 100 people. Like everyone was just out like walking or riding their bikes or running. Like no one wanted to be inside. And I was like, yeah, we have all been through this like brutally cold winter. Like it was much colder on average in January and February than usual. And so it was so nice to have that like one warm day. We had a few warm days, but that one warm stretch that like kind of gives you the motivation. And even today it's going to be 12 or 13 degrees Celsius here, and like and it's sunny, and it's like that's good enough. Like I will take what I can get.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a little late to this. The finale airs on Sunday, but I've started and I'm a little more than halfway through the White Lotus season 3. That is my recommendation for today. I have a weird history with the White Lotus as a TV show. I did not like. I watched most of season 1. I think all but the last 1 or 2 episodes when it came out, and didn't really like it for as much as everyone was talking about how much they loved that show. Wasn't really clicking with me. And then season 2, which I think people saw as a down step, was the one that did click with me. Like I liked that season a lot more, and I've been enjoying this one. So like maybe my taste is bad if you liked season 1 of the White Lotus, but yeah, I have, there's I believe 2 more episodes for to catch up on before Sunday's finale. But yeah, it's great as ever. Mike White knows how to write annoying rich people who you want to see suffer. That is how I would describe that show. So the White Lotus season 3 is my pick of the week. I don't know if it's making me happy though. That show is not like a feel good. It's not a feel good show. Maybe don't watch it if you're in a bad mood. And that's it for this week. Thank you all for listening. It has been a weird couple weeks for Android news. Obviously, we talked about the Edge, but we spent the last 2 weeks talking about the Switch 2 or the regular Switch. I promise you, we will probably not talk about it next week. Speaking of next week, Daniel will still be out. We do have a special guest already booked for that episode as well. So he's been referenced many times on the show, but never been on. Ben Schoen from 9 to 5 will be on the podcast next week. So look forward to that. But before that, Ryan, thank you for coming on. It's been really great having you.
Thank you for having me. I've been watching these episodes. I put them on in the background when I'm shooting B-roll, and it's nice to finally be on it.
Yeah, no, we will absolutely have you back. Hopefully with Daniel in tow as well, so we can get the 3 of us on here. But no, this has been a blast. Thank you for sharing your gaming thoughts, which I don't know if you knew when we dragged you on you were going to have to do.
Jules, he mentioned that we were going to do some Switch 2 stuff, and I was like, great, nice. Because that is exciting.
Nice. Perfect. Well, if you have feedback, you can write the show at podcast@androidpolice.com. Like I said, write in if you have changed your phone plans because of tariffs. And in fact, that might be my weekend poll this week, now that I'm saying it out loud. So I might change what I originally had planned. But until then, thank you for listening, and we will see you next week. Bye.